What's up guys, my name's Brandon and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss even more iOS 18 features and changes, how this iOS 18 update has been bricking people's devices, details on the next Vision Pro, a crazy AirTag story, and more. Okay, so let's start with what in the world is going on with the M4 iPad Pro. And I say that because the official iPadOS 18 update that came out last week completely bricked multiple M4 iPad Pros. And we saw this on Reddit, we saw this on the Apple support forums, we saw this on Mac Rumors forums. Everybody was asking for advice. Some people even took their iPads into the Apple store and they said, yeah, we can't fix this, and they had to replace it. But what's even crazier is that it's been an entire week and we still have not received a fix, an updated version of iPadOS 18 for the M4 iPad Pro. That is very odd. But you know what's even more odd? HomePods are also getting bricked with the iOS 18.1 Beta 5 update. So if you attempt to install that on your HomePod, I guess HomePod version 18.1 Beta 5, it would brick your HomePod as well. Like, at least that one's a beta, so it's kind of excusable, not really, but this is insane. Like, we haven't really seen this from Apple in quite some time. So what is going on with iOS 18? Anyways, let's move on to some more positive news, because Apple is also planning to launch iOS 18.0.1 very soon. So this was found in Mac Rumors internal analytics, and I would expect this update to be out most likely next week, honestly. I think this is going to come out sooner rather than later, and this is expected to fix multiple things, including the touch responsiveness issues. So this was first thought to be an iPhone 16 like hardware issue, but turns out it's more of an iOS 18 bug and not device specific to the 16s. There's also a big iMessage bug going around right now where if you send an Apple Watch face to somebody, it can just completely crash their messages application over and over again. So I would expect this update to fix that. And there are multiple issues with the control center as well that I would expect to be resolved with this update. Now keep in mind, a double point update like a 0.0.1 is always going to be bug fixes and security enhancements only. We're not going to see any new features. That's going to be saved for 18.1 and the single point updates. 18.0.1 is going to be strictly a bug fix update. But what's not a bug fix update is iOS 18.1 Beta 5, which just launched this week, and this was a much bigger update than Beta 4. As you guys know, I didn't cover Beta 4 because there was just a lot going on, but Beta 5 is a much more significant update than Beta 4. So if you didn't already watch my What's New video, I'll leave that up in the cards and down in the description below, but I wanted to cover some additional features because there's even more found in 18.1 Beta 5. And the first thing is a pretty big one, and I mentioned this in the video, but I didn't actually show it. That is drag and drop for iPhone mirroring. This is huge. This is what I've been waiting on since it was first announced, back at the Worldwide Developers Conference. And now you can drag and drop files between your iPhone and your Mac. So I found that this works great with like Notes, for example. If you want to pull something in and out of Notes, it works great right there. There are multiple other use cases for it as well, but it's just great to see that we finally have drag and drop with iPhone mirroring now. But as far as other features, we did get a minor tweak to the app icon for the Apple Watch application. So it's now updated with the Apple Watch Series 10 glyph. Very faint change, but you can tell if you look at them side by side. And then we have multiple shortcuts that were added in iOS 18.1 Beta 5. And these are a pretty big deal. So shortcuts have always been looked at as like kind of this thing that's like, okay, I'm going to either use it on my home screen, I'm going to use it with Siri, or I'm going to use it like in the share sheet. It was really, that was it. I mean, but now that we have the action button that can launch shortcuts, now that we have the control center that can launch shortcuts, and the lock screen controls that can now launch a shortcut, now all of a sudden these shortcut actions are a much bigger deal than they really ever have been. So the fact that we have multiple really useful ones here in 18.1 Beta 5, I think it's going to go overlooked by a lot of people, and it really shouldn't be. So the first one is search and control center. So if you just search for control center, you'll see that it's called show control center. And this will just basically toggle or show and hide the control center. So basically you can have this mapped to the action button and it will just launch your control center when you press the action button, for example. And then the other one, which is my favorite, is search. So this allows you to launch Spotlight search from, a shortcut action. So again, you can map that to your action button. You can map that to your lock screen wherever you want instead of relying on double tap or something like that. This is a much more accessible and much better method of doing that. And then here's another one that's pretty interesting. I haven't really thought about a use case for this yet, but pay Apple Card. So you can now have an action that pays your Apple Cards full monthly balance, minimum payment, or other amounts. You can choose right here within the shortcuts action. So if you have any idea of how to use that, how that would actually be useful, please let me know. I mean, I know you can press your action button and pay off your monthly balance. That's kind of cool, but I don't know that that's super useful. I don't know. Let me know if you have any thoughts about that. And then the other one we have is inside of health. So if you go to open view, this allows you to open up any of the views here inside of the health application, such as your different categories like, hearing, hearts, medications, mobility. If you want to open up one of those from a shortcut, you can now do that. And again, this is really beneficial when you realize that you could add those shortcut actions into your control center. I think, especially for health, for example, that can be really useful to have in your control center if you like to visit a certain section often. So yeah, do not sleep on the new shortcuts actions in iOS 18.1. They're pretty powerful when you know how to use them. And by the way, if you want to see an updated shortcuts tutorial, please let me know in a comment down below. I've been wanting to make that for a long time, but I just haven't seen as much interest there yet. So if you guys want to see that, please let me know either in a comment or reach out on Twitter, X, or wherever. Anyways, let's talk about some other iOS 18.1 beta 5 features and changes. So we also have one here inside of the camera control where we now have the option to have selfie mode. So we can now toggle our lens to selfie mode from the camera control button, which is really nice. Very handy if you only have one hand available and you have an iPhone 16. In the music application, if we go into one of our playlists, the search is back. So that was missing for some reason in beta 4. It drove me crazy, but it has returned in beta 5. In the settings, we have a new dark mode for Apple Intelligence and Siri. So you can see the dark mode icon up there. It says beta, but that little glyph icon is new in beta 5 in dark mode. And then we also got this splash screen inside of the messages application, reminding us of the Apple Intelligence features inside. So it shows message summaries and smart replies. And of course, one of the biggest changes in iOS 18.1 is a small one, but an important one. And that is that we now have our Wi-Fi control center toggle, VPN control center toggle. We have pretty much everything separated now, and except for AirDrop. We still don't have AirDrop as a separate icon for some reason, but you can see that now we have our own kind of connectivity platter here. So if you go to add a control and go down to the connectivity section, you can see that we now have our Wi-Fi and our VPN. We're just missing AirDrop. Come on, Apple. Now this week we did also see a new AirPods Pro 2 firmware update. So this one is version 7A305, and Apple did not say exactly what's new in this update. However, we did see from Mac Rumors the splash screen that's coming for the hearing aid features coming with the AirPods Pro 2. So they showed that these are actually inside of the code in 18.1. So that indicates that we are going to see the hearing features come to the health application and the AirPods over the air. So we're going to see that, server side from Apple instead of being a full software update. And that's not too surprising, but it is good to know that we should be seeing those features before iOS 18.2 comes out. So we should be seeing those features with 18.1. And I cannot stress enough how big of a deal the hearing aid feature on the AirPods Pro 2 is, and the ability to take a, sound test, a hearing test from our iPhone is going to be amazing. Like that's groundbreaking. It's the first time it's ever happened. The FDA has never approved any software-based hearing aids. So I can't wait to test that out here on the channel. Anyways, we also saw an update to the Apple Music Classical application. So we just received version 2.0. So they say this update adds album booklets for thousands of albums and also a recently added section to the library. So if you go into your library, you can see right here, we do have our recently added sections, and you will see those booklets for select albums as well. Now, as far as the performance goes, performance on 18.1 beta 5 has been solid. I mean, really no complaints whatsoever. Apple Intelligence works fine. All the camera control options work fine. Really the only issue I have are the touch responsiveness issues on my device, but that's not really performance related. That's more of just a bug. But aside from that, I really have no complaints here on 18.1 beta 5. It's what I'm using on my main device, my 16 Pro Max, and I've had no issues. Now, as far as the battery life goes, if we head into our battery settings here, you can see over my last 24 hours, battery's doing pretty good. I mean, that's pretty solid right there if you take a look at that. And if we go to our last 8 days, so I did activate this a day after it got released, you can see my last 8 days there. I've really only hit 100% or over 100% one time on that Sunday there. But yeah, battery life has been tremendous on my 16 Pro Max, and most people running 18 and 18.1 have mentioned that their battery life has been pretty rock solid. I mean, I have seen a lot of people complain about battery, but more people are saying the battery life is good than are saying that it's bad. So that's always a good sign. Anyways, let's talk about what to expect next from Apple. So next up is going to be Most likely 18.0.1. So we should be seeing that next week, I would imagine, especially now that Mac Rumors sees, employees and testers using it in their analytics. I would expect to see an 18.0.1 as early as September the 30th, that Monday. It doesn't mean it's coming out that day. That's just the earliest date that we could see 18.0.1. Now, after that, we should be seeing 18.1 beta 6. It doesn't have to come after that. It could also come before that, but we should also see 18.1 beta 6 at some point next week. So Apple typically releases betas on Tuesday, so I would expect to see October 1st as a potential date for 18.1 beta 6. And then after that, I do think we're going to see beta 7 on the week of the 7th, and then potentially an RC on the week of the 14th, and then potentially a final release for 18.1 on the week of October 21st. I think the 21st, week of October 21st, or the week of October 28th are the most likely for iOS 18.1. However, Apple could release it earlier. I mean, a lot of people, everybody with an iPhone 16 pretty much, is patiently waiting for 18.1. I mean, that's where they're going to get Apple Intelligence, the feature that they were promised, during the event. So not promised, but it was advertised and made it seem like it was already going to be there when they got their device, for your average consumers at least. So they're waiting on 18.1. So Apple's trying to push it out as early as possible, but I think we're still a few weeks away from seeing that. Anyways, let's move on to the latest Apple news. And we're going to start with iPhone 17 and iPhone 17 Air rumored features. Yes, the iPhone 16 just got released, but we're already moving on to iPhone 17. That's how it works here in the Apple rumors world. But anyways, we just heard new rumors from Ross Young, who is extremely reliable, one of the most reliable in the industry. And when it comes to upcoming iPhone, rumors. So he's saying that the standard iPhone 17 and the slimmer model, which is being called the iPhone 17 Air right now, they're both going to feature the ProMotion 120 hertz display. So that alone, just that sentence alone, is a massive deal, because that makes you wonder, what does Apple have in store for the iPhone 17 Pro or the iPhone 17 Ultra, whatever it's going to be called? Because I know that a lot of people are only on the Pros right now for that display, and that's it. They could live with everything else except for that 60 hertz display, so that's why they're on the Pros. So if Apple's going to introduce the 120 hertz on the base model, what do they have planned for the highest end model? Well, I can tell you one thing it's not going to be. It's not going to be the under display Face ID, because Ross Young confirmed that that's not expected for the iPhone 17 series next year. So we're still early in the rumors game for iPhone 17, but it's going to be really interesting to see what comes out of this. And I think a lot of people are going to be excited about 120 hertz coming across the entire iPhone 17 lineup. Anyways, let's move on to everybody's favorite Apple product, the Apple Vision Pro. And that's because Ming-Chi Kuo just reported that the next Vision Pro with the M5 chip is going to enter mass production in the second half of next year. So that doesn't mean that we're going to see the release of the Vision Pro 2 or whatever it's going to be called at the end of next year. That just means mass production is going to start in the second half of next year. So if I had to guess, I would say that early 2026 is the most likely for the release date of this headset. Now, Kuo said that the main selling points will be the integration of Apple Intelligence with spatial computing. He said the major hardware change will be the processor upgrade to M5, which is currently M2 right now on the Vision Pro, which is a big jump, but other hardware specs and designs won't change much, and that will lead to lower costs and price points. Now keep in mind, this is not going to be the low cost version. This is not going to be the Vision, the regular Vision, not the Vision Pro. This appears to be the Vision Pro 2, another high-end model. So keep that in mind. But Kuo did say that just with added Apple Intelligence, that might be, better than you think. He said in particular, if the M5 Vision Pro can integrate something like OpenAI's Sora, it may elevate the user experience on the Vision Pro to unimaginable levels. So if we get something like OpenAI's Sora, I have to agree with Kuo here. That's going to be pretty amazing to have on the Vision Pro. I don't know if we're going to actually get that, at least not in time for this new Vision Pro, but that would be quite incredible. And Apple needs to do something at this point. I mean, nobody's talking about the Vision Pro at all. So we definitely need something. Now, something a little bit closer is next month's Apple event. So we are still expecting to see an Apple event next month in October for the M4 Max. Now, we're not expecting any of these Macs to get released in October. They're probably going to get released in November. But according to Mark Gurman, we should still be getting an Apple event. And I've had a few people ask me if we're going to see the updated Mac Studio, which that's the number one Mac I've been waiting on ever since M2 came out, because I skipped M2. And no, we're not expecting to see a Mac Studio until next year. So it's probably going to be the case for the Mac Pro as well. They'll probably be at the same event. This event is more so for the Mac Mini, the MacBook Pro, and maybe the iMac. And then finally, just as tradition, we have another crazy AirTag story. So this time, two teens were casually riding their e-bikes at the top of a parking garage in downtown Santa Barbara, California, when a group of 6 to 8 juveniles approached them with knives in their hands and robbed them of their bikes. The teens called 911 to report the armed robbery, and when police responded, they scoured the area and found two of the suspects riding one of the stolen e-bikes before ditching it and leading police on a foot chase. But as for the other bike, this one had the AirTag attached to it, and that teen was able to use Find My to track the real-time location and relay that information over to police. And sure enough, that led them right to the second bike and the third suspect. And all three of these 15-year-old suspects were charged with felony robbery and conspiracy to commit a crime, as well as misdemeanor elder abuse, because one of the suspects knocked over an elderly man while running from the police. So once again, a good ending and just another reminder to put an AirTag in anything that you deem valuable. But anyways, that's it for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, I would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss next week's Apple Weekly episode. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.